That's how I built an airplane,
Man.
used street hustle, and got my hands on a $650,000 plane. They have almost every single tree on Earth on these islands. When I landed, I was greeted by guys in flip-flop shorts and AK-47s pointed straight at my plane. Could you imagine taking the worst thunderstorm we get here in Miami, which probably only lasts 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour or two. Take that same storm and imagine it sitting over you for 2 weeks. If I remember correctly, I had like 11 or 12 close calls.
A near-death experience.
Russia blocked me from going into their airspace at the time.
And welcome to Game Changers Live from our College of Communication, Architecture, and the Arts studio here at FIU in Miami, Florida. So happy to have you here because we interview leaders who have been game changers in their field each and every episode. And today is no exception to that. We have my friend Barrington Irving. How are you, my brother?
Good to see you, brother.
Good
to see you.
So Barrington, you have probably heard of him. He is the first Black, first Jamaican, and youngest person to ever fly around the world solo, which is insane at 23 years old.
23 years young.
Man, 23 years old and $30 in his pocket. I don't know who would do that these days, but you got to have some guts and some belief in yourself. Let's dig into that story, man. So what was it that got you, number one, interested in flying, and then what made you think of, oh, let me just go fly around the world?
So honestly, it's just a serendipitous moment, to be quite honest. I've always admired anything to do with aviation and space, right? That sense of wonderment and stuff. But to be quite honest, I didn't think I was smart enough to do any of that stuff. It's just always cool to just imagine the world and what it looks like and wonder, more and to, I was born in Jamaica, moved to Miami, Florida at the age of 6. First grew up in Northwest Miami-Dade County. So at the time it was Carroll City, Miami Gardens area. And then I went to high school at Miami Northwestern in Liberty City. So while I was playing ball, I had this random chance meeting with an airline pilot. So I'm in a store looking out the window. I see this guy in this uniform. I could care less about the uniform. That was interesting. But I saw what he was driving. And I'm looking at him saying to myself, man, this brother looks like he makes a ton of money. Had no clue what he did.
But he looks good too.
He looks good while doing it. And I'm just staring at him the entire time. And he sees that. So as he walks into the store, he approaches me and says to me, hey, son, have you ever thought about becoming a pilot?
No way. Just like that, randomly?
Just like that. And I was like, no, I'm not smart enough to fly an airplane. So I asked him one question. And that question was, I said, man, how much money do you make? I couldn't help myself. I was just like, how much money do you make? And he leaned over, he whispered to me, and I'll never forget, I looked up at him and it was as if the heavens were behind him. And all I could say to him, I said, legally? He's like, yeah, man, this is a real job. This is what I do. So that's where my interest in aviation began. This gentleman, his name is Captain Gary Robinson. He flies for United Airlines. I'm still in touch with him. Amazing human being.
Wow.
And although I had the interest, I needed someone to push me.
Mm-hmm.
So my former high school teacher, shout out to Miami-Dade schools teachers, my former high school teacher, Miss Batiste, I couldn't stand this woman when I was in school. I couldn't wait to finish her
class.
Some
of the blessings come in the strangest places, right?
Yes. She's the one who said, Barrington, forget about football, pursue a career in aviation. And she kept on nagging me, and I ended up turning down my football scholarships. And that was it. I said I wanted to pursue a career in aviation. My parents, they were like, we can't afford to send you to school. We just can't. So Miss Batiste took me under her wing. And I first attended Broward Community College, it was called at that time, and then transferred over to Florida Memorial University. And that was it.
Wow. Does Miss Batiste know, and like, have you kept in touch with her? Does she know the impact that she had on you?
Not only her family, everyone, she knows. And she'll tell you, I wasn't a malicious, bad student. I just had a lot of energy. And I was just one of those kids in class where if you can't explain to me why I need to learn this stuff, like you've already lost me.
Right. Yeah.
And but she was just a stern woman, didn't play, but she knew her stuff.
Oh, that's interesting, man. So you had a curiosity from this stuff at a young age.
Yes.
And I like the way you think, because a lot of us, we'll go to school and we're just like, oh, we need to learn it because we need to learn it. But if no one really thinks through, okay, why do I need this? And how can I use this to apply it to something else other than just taking a test and then forgetting about it? What's the long-term impact of what I'm learning here? And is it going to make a difference in my life? So you had that at an early age, and then you go to college, and then what happened there?
So while I'm in college, I'm earning my flight licenses, right? I'm of course proud and would have never imagined. By the way, I'm also afraid of heights. A
Oh.
lot of people don't know this, but
Oh
I
my
thought that was
gosh.
just a me thing. And as my career in aviation grew and I'm flying with more pilots, I want to say at least a good 30-40% of the people I fly with, they're also afraid of
You're
heights.
kidding.
Kid you not, but it's totally different when you're in an airplane. So of
Because you
course,
have time to think about how afraid you are as you're falling.
no.
You actually have time
Well,
before the sudden stop at the end.
I think it's really a control thing, right? Because
Uh,
you understand all the math and science of what's going on, and you know how to control it. You know how to manipulate the plane,
right.
take advantage of different forces, and get the plane to do what you want it to do.
Mm.
So,
It's not as scary when you know that you're in control. So it's
correct,
right.
correct. But like standing off the edge of a cliff,
Oh
like, I
yeah.
get to do some crazy expeditions. Oh man, it's and everybody just looking at me crazy like, bro, I just flew with you. How are you afraid of
Yeah.
heights? But it's just totally different. And but while I was in college, I'm earning my licenses and one accomplishment after the other. You first start your private pilot's license, then you learn to fly in poor visibility and then commercial rating, multi-engine. And while that's going on, the gentleman who introduced me to aviation, Captain Robinson, he pulled me to the side one day and he was like, "Son, I want you to give back." And I'm looking at him puzzled, saying, "What could I actually give? I don't
I'm
have
not
any
making
money.
what
Yeah,
you're
I'm
making
not
yet.
making no money. What could I give?" And he's like, "No, I want you to share your time, share your knowledge, share your experiences." And that's when the concept of flying around the world started,
Hmm.
just from that conversation. And to be quite honest, it's not like, oh, I wanted to fly around the world to set records or anything. I was saying, you know what? I'm starting to speak to kids locally here in Miami. What if I do it on a larger scale and just inspire more people? Knew nothing about setting records and honestly didn't know how big of a challenge it was going to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes we approach things out of being naive.
Yes.
Thank God we didn't realize what it really took to do it, because we probably wouldn't do it.
I think a lot of the game changers you speak with, I think that's a key part of it, right? Sometimes you're fearless because you don't really know
Yeah.
what you're stepping into, or sometimes you don't have a choice.
And I think that's, being an entrepreneur, I think that's why a lot of people actually go into entrepreneurship, because they
Yes,
think it's easier than it really is. And
yes,
by the time they
yes,
figure it out, it's a little too late. They're like, all right, keep going,
yes.
keep going.
You either forged by fire or you melt, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And so so the day you decided to do this, you're saying, all right, now I'm going to do it. So what do I need? I need a plane. I need some sponsors. I need money.
That was probably the hardest part. Um, it's crazy because you'll watch the news or, hear people in community always saying, we want our young people to do more. We want our young people to do better. And I honestly didn't expect the rejections that I got when I said I wanted to fly around the world. Some people were saying, why don't you wait until you're older? And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because I'm trying to inspire young people. I'll be
Right.
too old to do that. And then other folks were saying, it's too dangerous. I'm like,
You're not doing it. I am, right?
Exactly, right? So
Support me.
it's for 2.5 years. Bottom line is for 2.5 years, people told me no.
So they kept giving you reasons why you shouldn't do it.
Correct. And I want to say the first year and a half, I couldn't understand no's. I couldn't understand rejections. I mean, to be quite honest, I was very upset, and I'm saying, I'm just trying to do something positive. Why are you telling me no?
Right.
Or at least if you're going to tell me no, pretend to help, pretend to do something. Give me some sense of hope.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until after about a year and a half, I had to put my pride aside and really study why they were telling me no. Okay, I don't have enough money. I get that. I don't have the training. I get that. So I started my own training program, right? Just learned talking to pilots, experienced folks, folks who've flown around the world, getting tips and suggestions from them. Folks were saying, well, you don't have the business acumen or leadership to really run a project at this level at your age. So clearly, I realized I'm going to have to do this. I don't have a staff. I'm going to have to grow in a way and stretch my mind and thinking in a way that I never had to do before. So I started to take those no's and say, how can I convert them into yes?
Mm.
And as you just mentioned, the airplane was a big part of it. Nobody's going to believe I'm going to fly around the world if I don't have an airplane. So I was trying to get people to rent me a plane, lease me one, let me borrow one. No. So I'll never forget.
Yeah, at
I'll
least if
never
you had a
forget.
plane, you can say, okay, I already have my plane. I just need
Correct.
some money for it. But you
Correct.
don't even have a plane.
Nothing.
It's like,
Nothing. I don't have a plane. I don't have no background. I don't have anything.
why
So
am I going to invest my money in you? How do I know you're actually going to do
correct.
it?
Correct. And I
So
and I get all those things, but you know, sometimes in life you just gotta give people a chance, even if it makes no
mhm.
logical sense.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, I was sitting down on my bedroom floor, frustrated and just down. And I was sitting down on my bedroom floor and I just had this light bulb moment. And I said, when people steal cars, what do they do with them? And of course, I'm saying, okay, they bring them into my neighborhood, they strip all the parts of the vehicle, and they illegally sell all the parts. So I'm saying to myself, I wonder if different companies manufacture different parts of a plane in the same way different companies manufacture different parts of a car. Think about it. You see one logo on the front and
Okay.
back of a vehicle.
Right.
No one knows there's multiple different companies that make all those parts.
Yeah.
So I said, what if I went after all the different companies that make different parts of this airplane? Sure enough, that was the case. I approached 42 different companies one by one. Instead of asking
What?
them for money, I simply asked them for the one part they manufactured. And
And
guess
you
what?
started putting the
And,
plane
and
together?
guess what? Yeah. And guess what? Everybody, of course, was saying, oh, yeah, sure, we'll donate it if you could get the other 41 parts. No one expected for
Get
me to
out.
get all those pieces of the plane put together.
So you put together the plane?
Yeah, so we pieced it together. And what I did was, now, of course, there
Whoa.
were certain components I couldn't touch.
Right.
It forced the manufacturer had to do it, right? But that's how I built an airplane,
Man.
used street hustle, and got my hands on a $650,000 plane. But I had
That's
no choice. What else was I
insane.
gonna do?
No, but
I
that's
had no
brilliant,
choice.
right? Like
Yeah,
out of that frustration, you're like, and persistence, there has to be a way.
yeah,
How can I reverse engineer this?
yeah. That was
And
my moonshot, brother.
nobody would have thought that I'm gonna just order pieces, I'm gonna get
Yeah.
pieces donated and put it together.
It was so wild and
It's like a
crazy of a
Frankenstein.
concept. It definitely is a Frankenstein.
Oh my
It was
God.
such a wild and crazy concept. And then what I started to realize is I'm building an arsenal of supporters behind me because
Right. All of a
now
sudden,
these
these are all sponsors.
correct. Correct. So these folks became sponsors, and I'll also never forget this. I didn't know how to manage and create sponsorship levels, so I
Right.
started to go online and look up different events and so forth. What's a gold, silver, bronze
Yeah.
sponsor,
Yeah.
platinum sponsor, and just start to mimic. So, and I thought about simplistic things I can do.
Yeah.
Obviously, your logo on the aircraft, maybe a speaking engagement, or an
Yep.
appearance, or just recognition in the press. But I really started to learn about business in such a different matter of fact, the aircraft manufacturer was upset with me because what I did was I peeled their name off of the aircraft and I renamed the airplane. I called the airplane Inspiration
Nice.
because they didn't support me.
Right.
And they lost out on a ton of press
Right.
because
An
of it.
amazing opportunity, right? Because
Yes.
they didn't
Yes.
believe in it.
Yes.
That's insane. Wow. I mean, like you were literally building the plane as you fly it in a sense,
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
business and the plane itself physically.
Exactly.
Man, that's wild. That is wild. I would have never
Yes.
thought that.
Yes.
I was wondering how you got that plane initially.
Yes.
And if you see this plane, you know, it's a beautiful, really awesome plane, but it's tiny too.
Big time.
And did you say, okay, that's all I need? Did
Well,
the other pilots tell you, yeah, this is all you need? Or they're like,
well,
no,
that
you're insane. You need a bigger plane.
honestly, that was step one. The next challenge was coordinating, getting permits to fly into different countries. Folks don't realize here in the United States, aviation is an amazing thing, right? You can get in your plane at any time of the day and pretty much fly to wherever you want as long as the weather conditions right. You're avoiding certain airspaces and you're pretty much good to go. Like aviation in the United States is
A
the
well-oiled
pinnacle.
machine. Right.
Yes, we're not perfect, but it's a well-oiled machine. But internationally, have nowhere near that freedom. There's permits and fees, and uh, uh, I won't name the countries, but for example, there were some countries that charged me pollution fees. Like, are you kidding me right
Yeah.
now?
What am I
I
polluting
should
with
be
with
charging
this
you a
little
pollution fee
plane?
for
Yeah.
breathing your air, and these weren't cheap fees. Like
Wow.
$10,000 pollution
What?
fee. I didn't even land there. That was just a
Oh, so that's
flight
just flying through?
flying through their airspace. But
Wow.
it's like the wild, wild
It's
west,
like paying a
especially
bribe. It's like,
back in 2007.
so when would you find out about these fees? When you're making your flight plan?
Yeah, so most of them I knew up front, but there were just some that there was nothing you can do to prepare. I mean, if someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed
And they're like, I want to extort this guy.
yep, then they have the power to do so.
And
And
so
then
how would you pay him?
that you
Yeah, like a
handle
bag
on
full of cash.
no, because I left with $30 in my pocket,
Yeah, I know.
three
So
$10 bills.
and there wasn't Zelle back then. And
Correct. But thank goodness I had a flight planning company, Universal Weather and Aviation. So they sponsored me. And basically, a lot of those costs came on the back end because, it's processing, things are
right,
being
right,
fat. Back then, they weren't being emailed, they were being faxed back and forth
right,
and,
right.
those type of things. And yeah, it took several months later. I mean, goodness, even a year and a half, there was still bills and stuff
Oh
coming
my
in, and
gosh.
you got to pay it.
Wow. And so when you started doing these legs, we were talking about this earlier, how far can you go in one tank of fuel? And you had fuel inside, like on
Yes.
board. You're like a
Oh
flying
yes,
bomb.
yes. Oh, literally, because of course there's the standard fuel that's in the wings of the aircraft, and I took out 3 of the 4 seats. I put in an extra 75 gallons of fuel, and then in one of the seats I put a high frequency radio, which is a different type of radio that can go over, uh, you know, hundreds of miles, and so that's how we modified the airplane for the most part on the inside. And in doing so, that really created um, and provided me the ability to basically fly the aircraft for as long as, 14, 16 hours type of deal. You got to remember, you got to factor in winds.
Wow.
And that's a long time to be sitting by yourself. It's not like, oh, you can get up and move about the cabin.
No, and
That's
there's
it. You're stuck in your seat. And, even coming out of the airplane, when
it
you're
was
flying that
difficult.
long, yeah, you come out, you crawl out on your elbows because you don't have a tremendous amount of blood flow
Oh my
in your
gosh.
legs.
So you ever get that deep vein thrombosis?
I didn't get, well, not that I know of. I mean, I was only
Yeah.
23 years old. I wasn't paying attention to all of that, but it definitely was painful. Because yes,
Yeah,
when you
your legs
fly,
fall
you
asleep,
use your legs and stuff, but
but not that much.
not
Like you're
that much.
walking
It's not
around.
like you're sprinting or even
Yeah.
walking. They're nice subtle movements in a coordinated facet, and that was tough, man. And
Wow.
then that's not even the mental side of it.
Yeah, the mental fatigue
Oh, big time.
that you had. So
It's big
when
time.
you would, let's say so the first part of your leg, you flew out of here.
Hmm.
Where'd you go? Up north a bit and then to like
Yes,
Bermuda?
yes. So actually, no, I went north to the most eastern airport in North America, in St. John's, Canada. It's the
Wow.
most eastern airport in North America. Then, because I didn't have de-icing, I didn't want to deal with that battle on the front end. I saved it
Hmm.
on the back end. Had no de-icing. I decided to go from St. John's, Canada, and flew nonstop to the Azores. The Azores, it's actually a
Off the coast
very
of
beautiful.
Spain
Yes,
or off the coast
yes,
of Africa,
yeah,
I think?
yeah, off the coast of Portugal, but very off
Portugal.
the coast. I mean, it's still several hours
Wow.
to get there.
So you're flying south at that almost like
Yes,
southwest,
yes,
southeast.
southeast. It's like Hawaii in the North Atlantic, but
Wow.
no one really knows about it because they're very big on preserving their lands.
Right.
And one of the things that's fascinating there, though, because of the slave trade and also it was a major shipping point, they have almost every single tree on Earth on these islands
No kidding.
because the birds would pick up the seeds and stuff
That's
back in the air.
amazing.
It's a really cool spot. Yeah.
So you flew basically southeast. You had to cross
Yeah.
the trade winds, right? The
Yes, yes. And then so I didn't get as much of the winds. I got pieces of it because it was in March. And then I
jet
landed in
stream.
Spain. Yeah, from the jet stream. And I landed in Spain, then proceeded to Italy, Greece. And then once I left Greece and got to Egypt, yeah, field trip was over with. Like it
Oh
got
man, that's
crossing the Atlantic got real. But once I left Europe, it got real in a different aspect, right? Infrastructure
because so
wise.
foreign too. And then
Yes. I mean, I remember I had some flight briefings where the guy drew on the chart. He was like, "Yeah, you have some clouds here." And I'm like, what is he talking about?" He literally started drawing clouds
no.
on the chart. Now, of course, you can't laugh because that would be highly insulting, but just the lack of technology at that time
Oh my
and
god.
and airspace infrastructure.
And you had no
Um,
radar.
no
No,
weather radar, no de-icing.
man. So you just had like the direction that you're going in pretty much and your speed and your how much fuel you have and
Yeah, and you're stretching the fuel. So there's this concept you could do with certain engines where you're running lean of peak. I was an experiment because no one ever did it with that engine for that long, right? It's one thing to say,
wow.
oh, I'm gonna run lean of peak for an hour or two, but I was doing it for 10, 12 hours.
So lean of peak just basically means like the most efficient
Correct.
speed
Correct.
you
You're
can
you're
go
running the
and
plane at like, 45, 50% power,
oh
40%, but
wow.
you're running it for a very long period of
Right.
time.
So what speed were you going on
I mean,
average?
on average, I mean, when you first take off, I'll be somewhere around, 170, 180, depending on how hot or cold it was. And of course, I'm very heavy in the airplane.
Hmm.
And then I'll get up closer to about 200 knots, which is pretty fast for a single engine
Right.
airplane. It's honestly very fast for a single engine airplane at that time.
So what was your plan if the engine died?
I had no plan, bro.
Do you have
I,
like
I back then I didn't even
a
know how to swim.
parachute?
I didn't even know how to swim
You
back
didn't know how
then.
to swim?
I mean,
Oh my god.
honestly, I was like, how much will it really matter? To be quite
Yeah,
honest,
right. If you fall in
it's
the
not like
ocean,
I had
it's
a chase plane or military support or anything. Like I had none of that.
so what was the plan? Did you have a parachute to say I'm
I
gonna
had
jump
no
out and
parachute. I did have a life raft, but there's an actual special story behind that. When I left Miami, I couldn't afford it, so I left without it, and I said nothing to no one. And then when I got to New York, someone noticed I didn't have a raft and they got on me about it. And I said, well, I can't afford it, so I'm leaving without it.
oh my god.
And they started calling companies and so forth. And there was a company, Winslow Life Raft. They were like, look, you can buy it after you finish your trip. But if you use
Right.
it, don't worry about it. It's on us. But they were real cool sports about it. Basically, eventually donated the life raft.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
they're real cool
That's
sports about
awesome.
it. Yeah.
And so then you start going into the Middle East and Egypt and then eventually Asia. Tell me about that. Like what was that experience like and what were some stories there?
In the Middle East, I think it was fascinating. Of course, everyone knows about the pyramids, so I always
Right.
wanted to see that in Cairo, Egypt. Had an interesting experience when I landed in Cairo, Egypt. They knew I was coming. I just guess they wanted to give me a difficult time. But when I landed, I was greeted by guys in flip flop shorts and AK-47s pointed straight at my plane. And
Man.
I'm like, man, I can't believe this. I don't.
What kind of welcome is
I
this?
done left the hood in Miami to get jacked up in Egypt, but they were following whatever protocol that they felt they had, and
And was this military or were these just
yeah,
guys?
of course, there's military out there, airport, but I think
Yeah.
these were just airport
people
quote
there.
unquote security type of guys.
Right.
And but I had a great time in Egypt. Actually, one of the most beautiful places I saw was a place called Luxor, Egypt,
Mm,
where the Nile River runs by. There's plenty of vegetation. They have some pyramids out there. I really enjoyed that spot. And to be quite honest, the Middle East is an area that many Americans don't know much about.
right.
And there's some just amazing and beautiful spots throughout the Middle East. And of course, then I ended up in Dubai, and that was like on a whole nother level.
Right.
And this was when Dubai was starting to just
Starting to take off, right, and
take
blow
off
up.
and grow. And you're just like, wow, what you can do with money, imagination, and the right business
Hmm.
strategy. It was phenomenal. And then what really started to let you know you're in Asia is monsoon season.
Oh no.
So I know here in South Florida we get crazy, crazy thunderstorms.
Yeah.
Monsoons, oh man, that's on a
Another level.
whole nother level.
Wow.
Could you imagine taking the worst thunderstorm we get here in Miami, which probably only lasts 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an
Yeah.
hour or two?
Like a
Take
passing
that
storm.
same storm and imagine it sitting over you for 2 weeks. Oh
No.
yeah, man. Monsoon season, totally different level.
Oh God.
Totally different level.
It's bad enough as like living there on the ground. Imagine being up in the plane in that.
Oh, it's a roller coaster. I flew through some stuff,
That'll
man.
keep you up.
The antenna from my HF radio
Yeah.
popped, and you're like, "Oh my god, I hope it doesn't get entangled in my propeller because then I have a
Oh
different
no.
issue." And yeah, it's a wire.
Good Lord.
Monsoon season is no joke. Or you're flying at, I'll never forget, I was flying at like 21,000 feet, mountains below me around 9,000 and change. Blink of an eye, my head hit the top of the ceiling in the cockpit. My life raft was floating. Everything was floating. I caught a downdraft, and there was nothing I can do to get out of it.
Oh my
And
God.
thank God I had enough room where it dissipated, and I was able to climb back up again.
So it just pulled you down, right? It just pushed you
Yeah.
down
No matter how big the airplane, you have certain storms.
and you're done.
Yeah, you're just a feather inside of that storm. There's so much energy
Oh my God.
inside of these storms.
So you must have been just thinking, okay, this is it. Like this could be the end.
Oh, plenty of
You
times.
had plenty of
Plenty of
those
times.
experiences.
I I was actually talking
Jeez.
to my kids about this the other day. If I remember correctly, I had like 11 or 12 close
Kind
calls.
of near
So
death experiences.
yeah, I was
We're
like, I'm
saying,
done.
here, this is it.
I'm done.
Nope, made it
Yeah.
out this one.
Yep.
Next
I'm
one's
done.
for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, man. So, I mean, this must have given you such a sense of resilience in your life that when you accomplish this, you're like, there's nothing I can't do. Right.
Oh, big
Because,
time. After flying around the
right.
world, I think I've kept that attitude and perspective ever since. Even when people tell me no to this, no to that, or they can't necessarily see or understand the vision that I have, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't care
They don't
anymore.
know the
It's
level of
it's
persistence that you have in your life.
not,
That,
not, not only the persistence, but what you're willing to sacrifice to productively get there, right?
hmm.
To stay up, and not sleep, to just be deep in thought and meditating on these things, deep in thought, just really focusing and having an intense level of focus. In my mind, there's very few people that can outmatch me in that area.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there must have been times where you were just thinking, "What am I doing? Like, this is insane. I need to just like
Oh, big
call it."
time. There were times I thought about. I'll never forget. I was tired, and keep in mind, you're flying
Yeah, yeah.
10,
It's not
12,
like you have an
14
espresso
hours.
machine there making
Correct.
coffee,
Correct.
right?
That's just the flying. That doesn't count, the preparation before you depart and after you land and
Right.
all the different paperwork and things you have to fill out with each country. I'll never forget one time I was thinking, okay, maybe I can put my airplane in the cargo area in the back of a 777,
Yeah,
and
and
it
get
flies, and I
a
just turn on
and
the
technically
tracker.
I flew around the
Yes,
world, right?
yeah, but that you have thoughts like that when you're tired, and you have a different set of thoughts when you think you're about to die. I'll never forget. I was flying through so much icing, the airspeed just kept creeping back, creeping back, creeping back, and I'll never forget. I was so desperate. I started to blow out the window as if that would do
Like that would
anything
do anything, but you're
to
just
get the
that
ice out. Yeah,
delirious, right?
you're that delirious and tired, and you think you're about to die.
Oh my
Yep.
God. And so how did you get the ice off?
I had, honestly, it was the grace of God I survived that one. I probably had 7 to 8 more knots before I would have fell out of the sky. Yeah.
Wow.
So there are certain parts of the world, it's actually colder the lower you are than the higher you are. It's
Really?
called temperature inversion. So that's what I was experiencing. But I was limited in how high I can go
Right.
because it's a single engine airplane that goes only up to 25,000 feet, which is impressive, but still not enough when you're dealing with certain storms.
What part of the world were you in at the when
That
that
was in the
happened?
North Pacific. Yeah.
Oof.
You ever watch the show Deadliest Catch
Yeah,
where they're hunting for,
that's where you
man,
were?
that whole region, man, that's a different
Oh, that's
planet.
insane.
That's a different planet, man. I remember after flying through that area, I landed on an island only 1 mile long, 2 miles. There's a small Air
Whoa.
Force installation there where they watch for missiles and different things. Only 200 people there, if that. That was a place called Shemya, Alaska, and I landed with 12 minutes of fuel left. It wasn't that the distance is what got me. It was there was so much icing. The plane is working harder because the
Right.
wing isn't producing as much lift, and I'm dealing with turbulence and storms. I'll never forget that airline pilots, they radioed down to me and they were saying, hey, you got to go into Russia. Russia blocked me from going into their airspace at the time because Bush and Putin
Oh, wow.
were feuding. So I'm like, oh gosh. So I didn't have enough fuel to turn back either. And they asked me for my parents' name and phone number.
Oh,
And they said, well, let
jeez.
them know we spoke to you. I was like, bro,
Oh
are you
my
serious
God,
right now?
that's
But yeah. So I still had like 4.5 hours to go, 4 or 5 hours to go. Yeah. Yeah.
oh, what a
Yeah.
horrible feeling.
You go through stuff like that, man. I'm sure you have listeners that have had different extreme experiences in life.
Mhm.
You go
I
through,
can
not
relate.
that you don't fear anything in life, but you accept the reality
Mhm.
and the beauty and how brutal life can be also at the
Right,
same time.
right.
Yeah.
My gosh, man. So you get back, successful trip, you get a lot of press, obviously, setting world records and so forth. Then you see the idea for the flying classroom,
I,
right? Tell
I
me.
actually didn't see that immediately, to be quite honest
Okay.
with you.
So what did you do when you got back?
So after I got back, I'm like, shoot, it's my turn to make some money flying
Right,
airplanes.
right.
That's what I was thinking.
If I got through all this,
Yes,
I
it's
can
just,
definitely
and I
fly
had
a,
plenty
a
of
normal
job
plane.
offers. There was a teacher, and I also had various influential folks from the community. A gentleman, Fabio Alexander. Big shout out to Fabio from Miami Executive Aviation. He's the one who co-signed for the airplane, whole 9 yards. And when I got back, he definitely saw like this could have educational impact on a whole nother level.
Right. Because when you were
So
going around, you were broadcasting.
yeah, and it wasn't like we didn't have social media. Social media wasn't a big thing back then, but I was
Right,
giving like different updates on a website blog
right.
type of deal.
And schools were keeping up with that,
Schools were
right?
keeping up.
Kind of
Schools were
cheering you
meeting me
on.
in different places. So I knew something was there, but there was a letter written by a school teacher from here in South Florida. She wrote in a letter to my team thanking me for flying around the world. She said she had no maps in her classroom, no globe in her classroom.
Until now, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
she went to Walmart actually and bought a shower curtain with the world on it,
No
hung it up
way.
in her classroom, and everywhere I traveled to, she started to create lessons.
Oh, that's amazing.
She thanked me for inspiring her students, but she begged me to empower them. That email made me realize as much as I accomplished, I was only at the beginning of my pinnacle.
Ah,
And she was right. What am I doing to empower kids? So we have a nonprofit called Experience Aviation, and we just started doing projects. So the first project we did, we took 60 kids from failing schools at the time in Miami. It was in 2008, high school kids, and we challenged them to build an airplane from scratch in 10 weeks. And I promised them if they built it, I would fly it.
oh my gosh.
That project, after I flew it, really launched us in education. And the next project, we challenged young people to build a car faster than, this was middle schoolers, to build a car faster than a Ferrari 430 Spider and then take it to race against a jet. And then we just started doing all these different projects through our nonprofit. And we continue to do those type of projects through our nonprofit with kids for free. All of these programs are free to kids,
Wow.
and we've seen the fruits of our labor where now these kids are airline pilots or engineers or in various STEM fields.
Hmm.
I then realized, okay, only certain kids will get a chance to access that. So what can I do on another level? And I said, well, there are companies who sell curriculum around me. What if I sold my own curriculum?
Mm.
And then that's when I created the flying classroom.
My gosh, man. And so this has taken off in a huge way. Kids can get the time, get the experience to kind of do a hands-on learning experiment
Yes.
in class, and you have one of your teachers in on Zoom kind of guiding them through that
Yes.
whole process.
Yes.
And I think you're right. Experiential learning is so important. That's the way we really process things mentally. It's not just in theory, we're actually doing something hands-on, and then it gives the teacher a break also, right? So it's a win-win all around.
Let me tell you something. What's killing us in education is quite a few things. And I think one of the biggest things is content.
Mm.
That's number one. Students want purposeful content. And I think the other thing that's killing us in education is we don't know how to sell to our kids. We don't know how to sell the why I need to learn this to our kids.
And that stems back to your
Yeah.
whole point when you were growing up
Yeah.
yourself, right? You're
Yeah.
like, why do I need this?
Correct. Because I mean, think about adults and
And
reward
now more than
programs.
ever,
Yeah,
right?
adults are being sold all the time.
Yeah.
Why not kids? If you sell me on what I'm about to do, then
The
I understand the
absorption rate is
purpose.
going to be much
Yeah,
higher.
it's just like building airplanes or race cars. You think any of these kids ask how much math or science you have to learn? Or a few weeks ago, we were chasing the solar eclipse at 47,000 feet in the air. You think any kid's going to be like, why do I need to learn about the eclipse? No, they want to see these
Yeah, of
things in
course.
reality. We had a chance to film an expedition with the U.S. Coast Guard around machines and rescuing and so forth. It's all in how we present to our young people. And I'll be quite honest, COVID really exposed that. Young people, I saw it with my own kids. They had a chance to really analyze and say to myself, why do I need to learn this? Or if they didn't ask that, why am I dedicating as much time
Right.
to this? And I think teachers need help and support. There's so many amazing things in this world. You cannot be a subject matter expert in everything. But
Mhm.
if content was packaged in a manner where
That's
you can interesting
interesting.
and you can integrate it and build on top of it,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
thoughtful. All
Yeah.
the math science that just comes along with it.
Yes, big time.
Right.
And we found tremendous success doing that with Flying Classroom. Started in 2014, sold over 3 million licenses nationwide, and
Wow.
do no advertising, just word of mouth.
That's
And
amazing.
very grateful for it. You know, it's education in this day and age has to be revamped differently. And there's no one answer, but there are common sense things we can do. Just there's just so many common sense things we can do. And I think to some aspect, even our teachers, we know they care, but where do they draw their inspiration?
True. Probably just from what they're required to teach because they
Exactly.
have to teach to the fast or to this test, and it's boring because then the kids are like, what do I need? What do I need to do this for? This is
We've seen this in a lot of school districts we work in, and we've seen this in a lot of school districts we've worked in. If I can inspire you to learn, you can learn.
oh yeah. And you'll give 120%,
100%.
right? Even more versus
Yep.
just kind of the bare minimum.
100%.
Yeah. So then you go ahead and you see an opportunity with BITS, which is the Barrington Irving Technical Training School. And having worked at Caterpillar for so many years, I know that there was a huge demand for mechanics, diesel mechanics, technical mechanics, and there's still today that need in the airline space in a huge way.
Yeah, this culminating in a number of different facets. Number one, I'm very big on history and wars that were
Hmm.
fought. Of course, World War II is one that captures so many of us because the world could have looked a lot different if that went
Sure.
differently. But when you look at a war like that, what saved the United States was technical skills. When you really
Hmm.
analyze and look at it, it wasn't just building bombs. It was, taking over an island and building a runway out of the coral surrounding the island so a B-29 can take off. And when you really look at that, technical skills is what we really stand on in this country. Yes, has there been advancements in technology? No question. Is AI coming? No question. All these things are coming. But I look at that. I'm sure everyone has heard we have a shortage in aviation, for
Hmm.
example. Aviation is just one of them. Automotive industry, manufacturing industry, all have crazy shortages. But yet still, I, for example, look at Opelika Airport and I look at the surrounding communities of Opelika Airport. You got Opelika, Miami Gardens, Hialeah. Immediately,
Hmm.
There's tons of people in those neighborhoods that's more than capable to work in our industry.
Sure.
Then I started to look at it from a collegiate level. Look, if every major institution in Part 147 Training Center graduated at 100% capacity, we would only produce 11,000 technicians in aviation a year. It's a drop in the bucket,
Wow.
especially when you're dealing with the average age of a technician in aviation, 54 years old. It's a serious drop in the, yeah.
54. Oh my God.
So I started to look at it, and yes, we do work with young people. You know, you got amazing schools down here, for example, like George C. Baker or Broward College, and we get them jobs in industry. That's only going to do so much. And I started to say to myself, is there a way to take someone from off the street? Doesn't matter what neighborhood they come from. Doesn't matter if they just came out of Miami-Dade Corrections. Shout out to Corrections. They're a great partner with us. Doesn't matter if they're coming from United Way, Greater Miami Service, wherever. Can I take almost anyone, work with an amazing team of people to upskill them over the course of 12 weeks, 16 weeks, get them an entry level job in the field that pays them well, and then they start to grow. And then if they want to, go to, get their post-secondary education, all those things, they can get it.
But it gets them a stable, steady
100%.
platform from which to
100%.
work.
I mean, you're involved
Hmm.
in communities.
Sure.
How many people out there can say, you know what, let me take a year and a half, 2 years, 4 years, dedicate this time to
No,
this
you
event
can't.
without a
And then,
stable job? It never
especially in
happened.
Miami where everything is so
Yes.
expensive these
Yes.
days. To
So that's what BITS was built around. That's why we created the Barrington Irving Technical Training School, is to quickly upskill those locally from our community with no real prerequisite other than the
Hmm.
right work ethic. And we'll train them, get them employed. And we started it, and it's just blown up, man.
And your
It's,
retention rates have
oh,
been off
yes.
the chart. Like,
Yes.
what's the secret sauce for
Yes.
that versus the industry?
I think part of it is transparently showing people what they're about to step into, right?
Hmm.
So, these jobs, they're
It's not a fancy
no,
influencer,
no,
YouTube,
no, 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 no. People see private
yeah, yeah,
jets and
they
they're like,
see,
they don't think about, well, it might be really hot outside or a thunderstorm or it
right.
might be
I'm
cold.
not in the jet hanging out in the AC
Exactly,
on the couch. I'm
exactly.
like on the engine.
Exactly. So we're very transparent with that. Also, we work a lot with them on professionalism, some aspect of financial literacy. We just partner with the United Way to do even more of that. But I think the biggest thing is the mentorship after they get the job.
Mm.
That's why we're having strong retention. So our space at the airport has almost become like a social club, right? Because these folks have realized maybe in their community they can't really identify with everyone in their community. Things have kind of changed,
Right.
right?
So
You're
then you kind of
making
go
more,
there to
it's
get in
different
that right
mindset.
ambiance and the right
Correct.
environment.
Correct. Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But the mentorship is key because once they get employed, you want to make sure they have support at least for the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
Because there's things that happen, things pop up with family, things pop up medically, things,
Hmm.
and sometimes, they might not know what to do, and they just need someone to talk to.
Sure.
And these are adults; these aren't young kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
These
These are
these
adults.
are these are adults, and in some cases, some people just don't know how to make that transition to go to another industry.
Wow.
They just
Yeah.
don't know.
They've never
Yeah,
done that and never worked in
yeah.
a professional setting
Yeah,
and
you
so
think
forth.
about an
So
airport, it's security gates everywhere. It's not as easy to access.
yeah.
How do you access it?
Yeah, man. So let me tell you, you've done some amazing things, not only inspiring others, but you're empowering others through your different organizations, the nonprofits, the Flying Classroom, the BITS. What's that one thing that if you could go back in time, you can tell your 23-year-old self before you got on the plane and about his future or something? What's that one thing that you would say, give yourself advice you would do?
I'll definitely give my 23-year-old self investment advice that I could have taken advantage of early. I think that's everyone, right? I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
everyone
I
for the
think
most part.
for
But
sure.
the one thing I'd probably say is not to undervalue the art of strategy.
Mm,
Before I do anything, 80% of it was thought of out in my head. Now, it won't 100% work out the way you thought,
right.
but sometimes part of strategy is an element of time, allowing things to come together. Sometimes part of strategy is you need the right people for things to come
Yeah.
together. And you have to be patient or find that right individual. Sometimes the art of strategy is being able to orchestrate. It's like creating a movie production. It's like the adults we just spoke about.
Right.
They are stepping into a production. Yes, it's training. They're stepping into a production. The experience, what they see, the conversations they're having,
People they meet.
the
Right?
people they meet. It's a production. And I think if we think of strategy more like it's a production,
Hmm.
strategy will get implemented more quickly and efficiently.
That's big time.
Yeah,
That's big
like
time.
I didn't have any issues with failure because I was already poor. Right? I couldn't get any more
Yeah.
poor. You know what I'm
Couldn't get any
saying? Like
worse.
I didn't have like those type of issues. You can have all the potential in the world if you don't have the right strategy of execution. You
Right.
really have to become a strategist.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And playing the long game, not being
Yes.
in such a hurry. Have some patience.
Yes.
Things are gonna come together. You start.
Yes. And young people today and people in general today, because everything is so instant,
Mhm.
they struggle with that.
Yeah.
So I have a internal formula. Almost any major project I do takes 3 to 4 years. 3 to 4 years for it to hit. But when it hits well.
It hits right.
Yeah.
Barrington, brother, you've been amazing, dude.
Oh.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, Sergio, I enjoy it, man. We
There's
got to do a podcast from the air or something.
we should. We gotta
No,
do it.
seriously. We should do that.
There you go. You heard it, Lenny. You're gonna get on the plane with us. Our editor back here.
Lenny's probably like, man, this brother said he's afraid of heights. I don't know if I'm going up with him.
Man, that would be amazing.
Yes.
We'll go shoot on site
Yes.
somewhere,
I'm dead
in one of
serious.
these missions.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to like, share, and subscribe because you could be the game changer in someone else's life, just like the teacher was and so many others in your life were game changers in your life. You never know how your words are going to impact the lives of those that you are in touch with. So make sure to like, subscribe, and share this. Thank you so much. See you next time, guys.